Hello and welcome to our eighth episodes of Azure as Community Stand-Up, Azure SDK Community Stand-Up actually. And my usual co-host Hector is out sick, so it will be just me. And for today, we'll go into default Azure Credential and what is it and how do you use default Azure Credential for JavaScript, SDK, and also TypeScript. So, without further ado, let's move on to our overview. So, we'll start as usual with what do we have new in October, and then we'll go to our Azure SDK for JavaScript and default Azure credential. And today we have a special guest, Karishma from our JavaScript team, and then we'll go through Q&A. Uh, Before we move forward, I want to again put our PM team out there. Reach us on Twitter or uh, I believe now it's called X. So reach out on X, and you can also reach us out on GitHub. If you have any questions or any features you want us to add, or you are just lost in troubleshooting some of our stuff, just reach us out. And we have specialized help, and it's been broken down into specializations. So, let's go into our releases this month. What's new? As you see, initial stable releases, we have a lot of management libraries. And if you see, mostly they are for Cosmos for PostgreSQL. So you can create PostgreSQL databases on Cosmos DB and hybrid connectivity as well. Uh, we do have two monitor ingestion libraries for .NET, and we have a monitor OTel for JavaScript as well. For beta, we mostly have again management library for our Playwright testing services. If you haven't checked it out, please go check it out. And we do also have a checkpoint store, blob checkpoint store for C++. So in addition to in-memory checkpoint and event hubs, you can do a blob storage checkpoint store as well. And other than that, we have a beta for Azure Content Safety for Java and JavaScript, and we have a schema registry for schema registry serialization for Java. So these are beta. You can check it out, give us feedback, and we'll improve. So without further ado, I'm gonna bring out our next guest, Karishma. Hello, Karishma. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good as well. So, Karishma, tell us a bit about yourself. What do you do in Azure?
So I'm a software developer on the Azure SDK team, um, Azure SDK for TypeScript specifically. And I currently work on the Azure Identity Library, which is the library that is used for authentication and authorization for access to Azure resources.
Okay. So, you're JavaScript through and through. So, do you work on any other languages or just JavaScript?
So right now, I only work on TypeScript and JavaScript. Like that's the
Okay.
only.
Okay. So, what do you have in store for us today?
Yeah, so today I'm going to talk about default Azure credential, which is a very which is a credential which is designed for developers to quickly get started with the authentication, regardless of where their application resides. Either it is on their local machine or it is hosted on the cloud on some resource. They will be able to just like run their code without changing the authentication procedure. They don't need to rewrite new code for it.
Okay. So, it's something like a environment aware authentication system, like you write once and it figures out what authentication to use.
Kind of, yes. So basically, default Azure credential is a chain token credential, which is essentially a chain of different credentials, like where each credential runs in a sequence, one after the other. So, like the first credential is attempted for to see if the requirements meet, uh, and if the configuration is appropriate, then the first credential will succeed. If it is not, if the requirements don't meet, then it is going to proceed to check the next credential, and so on in the chain till it meets the one that meets the requirements for the environment and the
Okay.
permission and all of those things.
And it still authenticates against Azure Active Directory or something else?
Yes, it does. Yes. So all the credentials are designed to authenticate with the Azure Active Directory, which so right now we've renamed it to Microsoft Entra ID, but basically, yeah, those are the same things.
Okay. So yeah, listeners, like, it's Azure Active Directory is also called Entra, so do not get confused. So is there a specific sequence of these credentials, or is it
Yes,
like
there
something?
is. Yes. So currently, in our default Azure credential, we have a specific sequence of credentials that run one after the other. So, these credentials are divided into basically like deployed. The credentials that are deployed on the service, and some credentials that are developer, that run only on the developer environment. So, the first one in this chain is the environment credential, which so the environment credential is basically going to detect like what environment variables are present on the system, and accordingly it is going to configure the particular credential underneath. So the environments could be either for the client secret credential, which is basically the client ID, tenant ID, the client secret, or the client certificate credential, which is basically the client ID, tenant ID, and the client certificate path should be present. Then a third in that same class is basically the username credential, which is basically the client ID, tenant ID, username, and password. So any of these three combinations of environments variables if present, then the environment credential is going to like
Okay.
be used for authentication.
And it
Then
will automatically pick up these variables
environment
if
variable,
present
yes,
and move on.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's going to authenticate. Then the next credential that we have in the chain is the workload identity credential, which is specifically used for Azure Kubernetes service environment. So like once correctly configured, like the workload, uh, I mean the Kubernetes service itself is going to like provide the
Okay.
token to your application, and it's going, and the default Azure credential is basically going to detect the workload identity. It's going to detect those the environment that is created by the Azure Kubernetes service for your application, and going to authenticate you through the workload identity credential underneath. Yeah, and then similarly, for the other Azure services, we have managed identity, which basically is going to work for your app configuration, app functions, Azure Arc, cluster, service fabric, and VM.
So
Like
basically, all of Azure Compute is part of Managed Identity. Okay.
most of it, yeah,
Okay.
most of it.
Okay.
So basically, through the Azure portal, you need to enable the managed identity, whether system assigned, user assigned, that does not matter. Like, just if you're using user assigned, then you just have to pass in the client ID through either the default Azure credential, or if you're using the managed identity credential itself. And basically, like the whole concept of managed identity is similar to workload identity, where the service itself, or basically where your application is hosted, that system itself is going to like configure the environment for you, and like everything is going to be just ready for you to authenticate, so you
Okay.
don't have to configure your own environment by yourself. So that is the idea there.
So
um,
these
that's
are
why it's called
all
managed
for,
identity.
yeah, these are all for running on the cloud. What about
Yes.
how do I run the same default Azure credential? How do I get authenticated on my local system?
Yeah, so for that, we have, so specifically for Node.js, we have these three developer credentials. Basically, they are linked to the developer tools that each language uses. So so most of the TypeScript or JavaScript developers use either Azure CLI, Partial, or Azure or AZD, like that is Azure Developer CLI. So for each of those, we have like different credentials for
Okay.
each of those tools. So basically, you are going to get authenticated through those developer tools, and then and like and once you log in to that particular developer tool, the authentication is going to just flow through it. And similarly for other languages like Java, .NET, you have like language specific developer tool. Like you can probably like check the README for each language. So
And
yeah.
this information is available on the README of every language, is
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yes.
So if I go to JavaScript and scroll down, I can find it.
Yes,
Okay.
you can. Yeah. And one more thing I would like to mention with DefaultAzureCredential is that it is designed to work in most cases, but there will be certain scenarios wherein your application needs to have a more secure environment, or maybe some other settings are required. So for those scenarios, either you can design your own custom chain token credential, or you can use a specific credential which are there either in the default as your credential umbrella, or the credentials that are present other than default as your credential within our library.
So does that mean like this thing is a sequence which we are calling it as chain token credential, and I have a bunch of token credentials, and as a user, either I can use default Azure credential or create my own chain token or just use one.
Yes, yes. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can either create a custom token credential if default as your credential does not meet your needs, or you can also just use a specific credential. For example, if your application requires you to have some sort of interaction like in the browser, so then you could use interactive browser credential, which is available, or or if it is if it is some sort of an interaction on your machine, or some device, and you could either use authorization code or device code credential like specific to your requirements.
Okay. Okay, so like interactive browser credential just pops up a browser and lets me log in kind of thing, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that's exactly what the idea is.
Okay, it behaves like Azure CLI then. Okay. So yeah, let's just look into some real examples now. We have talked a lot. I think people are angling to get some real working stuff.
Yes. So I'm going to present you my screen. Just a moment. Let me know when you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
I don't think
Oh,
so.
sorry. Okay, I think I.
Yeah, I just
Okay,
pulled it out. So we have
okay.
a big VS Code window. Okay.
Yeah, I hope the font is correct. Font size is
I
fine for
think I
you.
can see it. I think our viewers would
Okay.
be able to see it. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, so on line 12, I'm basically importing the default Azure credential from the Azure Identity Library. Then on line 13, I'm just like importing the Key Vault client from the Key Vault Keys library, and like I'm on line 14, I'm just importing the Blob service client from Storage Blob.
So are
So
we doing something on like the blob service or key vault today?
yes. So we are going to run like we're going to make some service calls through for the Key Vault and Storage Blob. So I'm going to create some keys in Key Vault keys, and I'm going to like create a storage container through the Storage Blob package. So and today, like my intention is to show how to use default as your credential like across various services, and across various environments. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, so that is the whole idea of
Okay.
today's
Let's
demo.
go for it.
So Right now, like on line 21, I'm just creating an instance of default as your credential, and I'm going to use the same instance of credential to authenticate against my key vault and storage blob. So on line 26, I'm creating a blob service client, uh, and I'm passing that instance of credential along with the storage URI that I have on line 27. So yeah, go ahead. You had some question.
Yeah, like I created a credential without any argument, so it will by default know the environment and find out what to do.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the idea. Yes. So then similarly on line I mean, yeah, so on line 31, I am basically just creating the container name uh, for the container I want to create. And I'm going to create the container on line 32. So this is basically making a service call to the storage block client to actually create the container. Uh, and similarly for Key Vault, I am using that same instance of credential that I created on line 21 to authenticate against the key client uh, along with the Key Vault URL. And then on line 42 and 45, I'm creating keys specifically, like, I mean, I just renamed it to like key 1, key 2. So these are also going to make service calls to the keyword client.
So
uh,
the credential itself is not only environment aware, it also knows what kind of scopes to use for what kind of services.
Yes, that's a very good question that you asked. So, if you are using our libraries to kind of make the service calls and to get authenticated, uh, then it is going to be aware of the scopes. Scopes are basically set of permissions for each Azure resource. So if you are using the libraries to get authenticated and to make the service calls, then yes, then you don't need to specify the scopes, because the libraries are going to take care of that for you.
Okay.
Now uh, now let's say you can also get the access tokens just by making calls to get token call. uh,
Oh, okay.
so um, so basically, like at at the back end of these service calls, like the get token call is done for you where the appropriate scope is already passed for you as the parameters. But if you want to do the get token call on your own through this credential, like I've commented out the line 22, but that is how you would do it. So you can specify the scopes on your own. So we can look at this scopes parameter. So basically it can be either a single scope or a set of scopes,
Okay.
and it has to be specific to one particular service, and it can be like different permission sets for like one particular service. So I want to be clear here that each access token that is provided to you is specific for that particular resource. uh,
Okay.
yeah. So basically, at the backend on line 32 and 42, like there are separate access tokens that are being passed to like for each of these
Okay.
resources.
So these are separate tokens, but I'm using the same
Credential
object to
instance.
get that token, and I can,
Yes.
if I want to, I can get the raw JWT token also by passing scopes. But if I guess it correctly, if I'm using the SDK libraries, then and using default credentials, then I don't have to worry about the scopes at all. It will figure out what scope to use.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Let's work for a developer.
Okay. Yeah. So I can run this on my local machine and then show you like what. So I'm gonna just build my code. Sorry. You can see my partial. Sorry, my CLI.
Yeah, it's small, but it's fine
Oh,
because
I can. Uh, does that help? I don't know.
it doesn't help, but I think it's fine.
Okay.
So you built your thing. Okay, now we are
Yeah.
going to
Now I'm
run.
gonna run the. I'm gonna run the code.
So now we are trying to authenticate it.
Yes. So as you
And
can
there
see
are
here,
errors.
yeah, we see that. So yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, that in case when the chain token credential or the default reserve credential does not succeed, then it is going to throw an aggregate exception error, where it is going to list out all the different credentials that have been tried in the sequence,
Okay.
and why they failed.
Okay.
So that like when nothing works, then you have your reasons.
Okay.
So in my case, I was trying to hope that it's going to pick up the Azure CLI credential, but looks like I'm not logged into any of my developer credentials.
Okay.
So for Azure CLI credential, I'll have to log in to it. So I'm going to run the AZ login command right now.
Okay. And it gives you what command to run as well. That's pretty nice.
Yes. So I'm going to authenticate, and looks like I'm logged in. Okay. Second. Pull up my VS Code again. Okay. Okay. So now let's run the code again. Okay, looks like it succeeded. It's created the container, it's created our keys, and it's listing all the keys as well, like both the keys that we just created.
Okay.
So looks like it succeeded. Yeah. And
Okay.
if you
Pretty
want
cool.
to check, yeah, do you like in case if you want to just verify what credential it used, you can just enable the logs, and then you can like verify what credential it actually used, and
Okay.
then
And that's just the any logger or it's the Azure logger.
oh,
Okay.
we have the Azure SDK logger. So basically, just like on line 15 and line 16, like
Okay.
you can just enable the set log level to whatever level. Like
Yeah.
we
Okay.
have, yeah.
And it
If you
will
want,
tell me.
I can run it for you. Like if do you think users would be
I
interested in
think we
seeing the
can just
logs?
move on. This is fine.
Okay,
This
sounds
will
good.
work. It's
Yep.
just logger. And it will tell me what credential was used. Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yes, yeah, it is probably like depending on the log level that you used, it is going to like tell you what credentials were attempted, why they failed, and it's going to tell you which one succeeded and how it succeeded. Basically, it's going to tell you like all the calls that were being made, and like you
Okay.
can also see the service calls.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Sounds good. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to demo you the environment credential.
Okay.
So I have a like environment
Yeah.
like so I'm just going to like rename it to an actual .n file so that it picks up. And I already have my uh, what do you say, like I already had my
Okay.
code to read the .env file.
Okay.
So hopefully it's going to pick up the credentials. Let's see.
Okay.
So looks like it has succeeded. Now, do you want to verify if it has? Let's we can enable the log and see if
Okay.
it actually picked up the right credential that we intended to do. So I'm going to just build it again.
So basically, what I see here is without making a change, just by in my code and recompiling TypeScript and all that, I can just
Yeah.
change the configuration and it'll take a different method of
Yeah.
authentication.
Right. So,
Oh,
so if you see, like to actually run the code, I didn't even compile it.
yeah.
Like I am compiling it right now because I enabled the logger
Okay.
just to verify if it is actually pulled. So you don't have to make any code changes. Like to to run it in a different environment is what my point is. So, see.
Okay. So basically, what I can see here is I can. Oh, this is a lot of logs. but
Yeah. So I'm going to just go over. So if you see, okay, we can go to the start of the logs first. So yeah, so like the first credential in the chain that we said was environment credential, and it's going to, like, it has found the environment variables that
oh,
we hoped it would find,
okay,
and then it is invoking the correct, like, the client secret credential underneath it.
okay,
So
that's
so yeah,
pretty
so
cool.
that is what I wanted to show.
So basically, this means like I can write my code on local, use my local authentication method and deploy it on production or testing, and in that environment, it instead of using my local creds, it will automatically pick up production creds. Do we have some example of running it on the cloud somewhere?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
Yes. So today I'm going to show you that I'm going to run my code on a VM where I've enabled the managed identity. So it's going to authenticate through the IMDS endpoint.
okay,
Um, here is my resource group which I've created. Sorry. So I have, like, the storage account. I have the key vault. I have like my virtual machine setup in which I've enabled the managed identity. Uh, and yeah,
so where do you enable the managed identity though?
uh,
So
so I can show it to you. So basically, if you go on the VM uh, and you go under the identity section under the security tab, so this
okay,
is where you enable. So I have
okay,
enabled system assigned. You can also enable the user assigned.
user side, okay,
Yeah, just be aware that when you're doing the user assigned, you also need to pass in the client ID. Oh,
okay,
also I forgot to mention that that for this, I mean, when I was running the environment credential and the Azure CLI credential, I was I had an app registration which
okay.
I used. Uh, so um, so you can look at at the documentation for how to set up an app registration, and you need to assign proper role assignments uh, for each of uh, for each of the resources that you want to access. So in my case, it's storage and key vault. So yeah,
Those
in
are
order
like
for the authentication to
standard
succeed.
Active Directory app registration, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So yeah, our
And that
users
also
can
you
go
enable it
and
through the portal. Like, you
okay.
create the app registration through the portal and you do the role assignments.
Yeah,
Just like here, you have this access control, right? Like, so similarly, like under your app registration, you will have this access control, and like you can actually, like, assign whatever roles you want to your app
yeah,
registration on each of these.
yeah. Our users, I encourage our users to look at the tutorial in our learn.microsoft.com site, and they have a very good walkthrough on Azure Active Directory app registration. Just use those. And they
Yep,
have pictures and steps as well, so it's super easy.
yep. And now I can show you how the managed identity authentication works and the Azure VM.
Okay.
So I have the exact same code that I have
Okay.
set up over here. So similarly,
And
basically
the
creating.
environment file is empty, is it?
Yeah,
It's
there is. Yeah, if you see, there is. So this is my code.
okay, and there's
There
no
is
environment.
no. Yeah, this
Okay.
is my code. Like, there is no environment variable over here.
Okay.
I just have a package.json, which is basically just taking this uh,
Okay.
as your identity key vault and storage. Then I have the ts config, like just the usual.
Just the usual
Yeah, just the,
suspects. Yeah.
and this is
Okay.
my index. So I have already built it. I mean, I can build it again just in case.
And it's the same code we just
Yeah,
use,
it is the same code. Yeah.
and yeah, and we can just run it here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it
So you
just
see, this
picks up
succeeds.
the credential from our managed identity. Okay.
Yeah, and in case you want to verify that, I can show you the logs for that as well, so that you're convinced that this is what it used at the back end. Yeah.
Yeah, it might not be a bad thing.
Yep. It's yeah, like it is easy to verify it.
And
So
okay,
So if you go at the start of the logs, basically you can see like what credentials were tried. So if you see like environment credentials, it is not listing any of the environment variables that it found. So for workload identity credential, so it's not listing any of the environment variables that it found. So which means that these two credentials were not present. So yeah, so it says that it's unavailable. Then it's going to try out the managed identity credential. Now managed identity, also like there are a number of environments that we support. So some of them are these, and
it
then
found the
it's
one required. Okay,
it found this cloud shell. So it's using this endpoint, it matches, and then the authentication succeeding through that. So default managed identity credential success.
okay. And yeah, in case uh, any of you need to troubleshoot, you can look at this URL at the bottom for troubleshooting. That was pretty cool, Karishma. Do we have anything else to demo, or that's it? I think it was a
I
lot.
think this is all that I had for the demo for today.
Okay.
Basically, my intention was to show that you can, like, I mean, for most scenarios, like I'm not talking about the complicated scenarios. You can use a default as your credential, uh, and uh, and in case, actually, we can just quickly show the README, which is there. Uh, do you want to pull it up, or I can pull it up?
Okay, I
Like,
can pull the read
yeah,
up, and it has.
yeah, it has a like it has a pointer to how to create your own custom chain token credential. So you can also do that, or you can use just like one specific credential. So basically, instead of just default as your credential, I can just use interactive browser credential or manage identity credential if I want to just restrict the uh, the the security of it. So I mean it's secure, but it's just in case
You
if
want
you are
something
in a
specific.
yeah in case if you're running your like your code in a specific environment, like a public cloud or sorry, like a government cloud or something of that sort, where this where like you really want to just restrict running it in that particular environment, you can use a particular credential.
And where do I find it in this README?
um Wait, so
I can go to a API reference doc and get it.
are you talking about creating the custom token credential? You can just like scroll.
Yeah.
Sorry, custom chain token credential. You can just scroll. So go to default as your credential, and then over there, I mean, on the
Okay.
README is what I meant. Yeah,
Okay.
like it is right underneath the default as your, yeah, underneath that,
Okay.
it
Th-
should be there.
this one here, somewhere here.
Yes. So yeah, so you see authentication.
Define a custom
Yeah,
authentication
yes,
flow.
yes.
Okay.
So if you see like yeah, we created like two credentials, client secret credential and just I mean another client secret credential. Then we are just creating our own custom chain. So this is how you can create your own custom token credential.
Okay.
It's custom chain token credential.
And I know for a fact that once we do something in JavaScript, we do it for all other languages also.
Oh
So
yes, yes. So yeah, so all the features, all the API designs are compatible across all languages of our libraries, and so I mean that is what our intention is, and that is what we work for uh,
okay.
to have.
Okay. Yeah, so pretty much the gist is use default Azure credentials and write it on your local, test it on your local, deploy, and it'll automatically figure out what authentication methods to use. So basically, write on local and run anywhere on Azure.
Yep.
Okay. Uh,
Do
let
we
me
have any
check.
questions from?
Yeah, I'm just checking. I don't think we have any questions, but if you have any questions, just reach out to us directly. I'm going to put some links here so you can look at releases and you can go to our GitHub. You can post questions on Twitter, or you can reach out directly to us on GitHub. We definitely answer a lot of questions on GitHub. Karishma has answered a couple of questions on GitHub. You can tag her also, and they'll answer. And I think that's pretty much what we had for today. So before we leave, Karishma, do you have any advice for JavaScript developers?
Yes, use the correct types for your
That
code
becomes
when you write it.
TypeScript.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
pretty cool. So thank you everyone, and we'll see you next month when Hector is back and he'll not be sick in a month. So we'll see you
Yeah.
again. See you.
Hope you get well soon, Hector. Bye, everyone.